The Mission Report is a presentation of HomeFront CyberCast Broadcasting, brought to you by HomeFront Cyber Support and Security. Tech support, security, and protection is their mission. HomeFront CyberCast Broadcasting presents The Mission Report, where we talk about whatever the hell we want.
He was all naked and raring to go.
Well, as long as it's legal. Welcome to the very first HomeFront CyberCast Broadcasting Mission Report. Don't worry, there's no naked here tonight. Although I can't promise that will be the case in any future mission reports. I'm just kidding, and I can't control the guests. I'm just kidding, I don't want to be kicked off of social media platforms in the very first HomeFront CyberCast Mission Report. But anyway, welcome to the show. I hope you like it, and if you do like what you see here tonight and you hear, please like, subscribe, follow us for more craziness as we move into the new year here. 2022 is going to rock because we say it, okay? Anyway, we got a lot of good plans for the HomeFront CyberCast Mission Report. This one is not live because I'm still learning things, and I was going to do a live HomeFront Cyber Broadcasting Mission Report for the first episode. I was going to do different segments cover different subjects, but the very first filming that we did actually was slightly longer than anticipated, and we thought it was pretty good, so we decided to actually record this one in advance and see how it goes, see how the first episode goes, and see what the general reaction was. So, but let me give you an idea on what we have planned for the HomeFront CyberCast Mission Report coming up in the future. First of all, I'm a broadcaster. I have broadcasting experience. Spent 5 years in radio. Some people might remember the voice from my radio days back in the late 80s, early 90s. So broadcasting is my thing. And I decided, hey, with the internet, let's get back to it and let's see what we can do here and have some fun doing it. Because, with all this COVID nonsense, I really think we need to start having fun again. So let's get this going. And I was like, okay, yeah. And a lot of people were saying, yeah, you really should. So here I am with the HomeFront CyberCast Mission Report. And I also have some plans for a HomeFront Cyber broadcasting to HomeFront Cyber Radio, which is going to be a rock and roll station. And it's going to be pretty cool. We've been working on that. The playlist has sounded really, really good. So that's going to be fun too. And it's all about fun. And I always say, if it ain't fun, it ain't worth doing. So here we are in 2022. Well, the Mission Report is also going to focus on local attractions and a lot of local things in Perry County, Pennsylvania. Local attractions. We have plans with our adventure series coming up in the spring and the summer, just going around, visiting different places and seeing what's happening. Not so much as a critique and, it'll kind of be a review, but it's not going to be critical because we just want to have fun. We don't want to go around critiquing things. And this is not going to be a place where, we're going to do a lot of negative stuff, negative reviews and things like that. We do want to have fun, go around, meet some people, meet some different places. We do want to focus on some local small businesses too. So especially, the local small businesses that may have been hit very hard by the COVID pandemic. It did come down hard on small businesses. I am a small business owner, and I can tell you when the lockdowns happened, there was a good 2 or 3 months where there wasn't much happening. And it does, even a small time period will have an effect on a small business. So we'd like to feature some local small businesses, help them out as best that we can. We're going to be featuring some music reviews, some things like that, talking about rock and roll, and different things like that. We'll be talking about concerts and local shows when we eventually get back into that on a full-time basis, because COVID is still having an effect on that as well. But hopefully in 2022 that changes and things change, and getting back to normal. That's what we got to do. We got to have some fun. And we'd like to also feature some guest interviews too. Maybe some owners of small businesses, organizers of local events and things like that. Or maybe just some people in the area who have social media shows and things like that, and they have different things to offer as far as content creators and things like that go. So who knows where that's going to lead, but that's our plans for the mission report. And if you like what you see and you'd like to sponsor us, if you're a business that would like to help us out, because we do have internet service provider costs. We do have advertising opportunities that we're going to have coming up in the future. Not so much with the videos, because the platforms like YouTube and Twitch and things like that, they all have it in their clause that third-party advertising is not really allowed on those platforms. But we are planning to put up a CyberCast broadcasting website where we might have some advertising opportunities available there. HomeFront CyberCast Radio will allow third-party advertising, so there's definitely going to be advertising opportunities to have there. But if you'd like to sponsor the mission report, I believe that's something we could probably talk about. So if you like what you see, and you want to get into something like that, just send us an email at cybercast@homefrontcyber.com, and we can talk about sponsoring and some other opportunities. The mission report is sponsored by HomeFront CyberCast Support and Security. That is the small business that is involved in the CyberCast broadcasting. So if you're looking for tech support needs, they're the people to go to. Just shoot an email to support@homefrontcyber.com. If Windows 10 is crashing on you, or if you're a small business, they do small business work and things like that. Just shoot an email out, support@homefrontcyber.com, and they'll set you up with the scheduling opportunity very, very quick, and they'll take care of all your tech support needs. So now, without further ado, let's get into the very first segment. And a lot of people have been telling me, hey, you got to do something like this. And I was like, you got to be crazy. Nobody's going to want to watch this stuff. And they're like, no. And I'm not a professional chef by any means, but I'm like, yeah, you know what? There might be some information. It might be kind of cool to do some of this stuff. So let's give it a shot. So we have not determined a name for this type of segment and this type of content in the show. So if you have an idea, you think we should call it this or call it that, just let us know. But anyway, this is about having fun. So the very first mission report is going to focus on cooking in the HomeFront CyberCast kitchen. All right. And it's all about smoked salmon on this episode. So without further ado, let's get into the very, very first HomeFront CyberCast broadcast mission report. And our mission is smoked salmon. Welcome to the first cooking segment in the HomeFront CyberCast broadcasting mission report. And we've got a good one to start things off. We're going to be doing some smoked salmon with some griddled acorn squash and also some wild rice. The recipes are going to come out of two different cookbooks. The smoked salmon recipe we're getting from the Spirit of the Harvest, which is North American Indian cooking. Got a lot of great recipes that covers the entire United States and some of the different tribes and how they used to cook and how they used to eat. And the other book that we're going to be using for the griddled acorn squash is the Sioux Chef's Indigenous Kitchen, which contains recipes from Sean Sherman and also Beth Dooley. Again, this is an excellent cookbook. This is really what turned me on to Native American cooking and indigenous recipes. Because no preservatives, it's all natural. If you want a really healthy, and I hate to say the word diet, because that's not really what this is. I mean, it is a diet, but when somebody thinks diet, diets are like, oh my God, I got to eat this way. Well, that's not the case with this. And a lot of diets, some people will go on a diet and they'll say it really doesn't taste good, and then they fall back to their original eating habits. Well, with this diet, I got to say, and that's how I am with diets. Some of them just don't taste good to me, so I always fall back to bad habits. But with this diet, I mean, you can really put some flavors together with just natural ingredients, and that's what we're going to be doing here today. So for the smoked salmon, anytime you smoke meat or fish, the first thing you want to do is you want to brine it or cure it which are two totally different methods to prepare meat or fish for the smoking process. And I found that in my experience, if you do a liquid brine, the fish tends to get a little too salty for my taste. So I prefer the dry cure method, which is what we're going to be doing today, and that's actually what's a part of this recipe. So some of the ingredients that we're going to be using, we've got some smoked salt, and maybe we'll cover smoking salt in a future episode. You can purchase this if you can find it. It's not real easy to find. I have found it at some different grocery stores. But if you can't find it, you can do it yourself, and it's very easy to do. You don't need to spend a lot of money getting it done either. The salt that we use is sea salt to smoke, and we use coarse sea salt, and then we smoke it, and then we put it into a Vitamix grinder, and then we just grind it down and make it finer so that we can actually use it for seasonings and things like that. Now, this recipe calls for some ground black pepper, but the Native Americans didn't really use a lot of ground pepper. For that type of seasoning, they would grab juniper berries, dried juniper berries, and they would grind them up and they would use them. So we're going to be using traditional methods of ground juniper berry. This recipe also calls, this is optional, also calls for some ground ginger, a little bit of ground ginger. And it also calls for brown sugar. Again, these recipes are a more modern twist, geared to more modern kitchens and what you can actually find. But the Native Americans most likely never used brown sugar until many, many, many years later in their recipes. What they did use is maple sugar. Sean Sherman has written about it. He uses a lot of maple sugar in some of his recipes. It's a little more expensive. It can be difficult to find. You can definitely find it on Amazon, but it's good stuff. So we'll be using the maple sugar. And the recipe calls for about a half cup of the salt, a half cup of the maple sugar, about a teaspoon and a half of the ground ginger. We got the teaspoon of the juniper berries here. And then, of course, we got our salmon fillets. Now, you don't want to do this frozen, because if you do that, it's not going to cure properly. So if you got frozen fillets of salmon or, chunks of salmon, you're going to make sure you thaw them out and dry them really, really good so that all the curing seasonings really do their job. If it's too wet, they're going to drip off the salmon. It's really not going to do much for your smoking process. So the first thing we want to do is we want to combine all of these ingredients in a mixing bowl. So in goes the salt, in goes the juniper berries, in goes the ginger, and in goes the maple sugar. So let's get them all combined up real good here. You can do this with a spoon, a fork, or whatever I like to do it. I like to be fancy sometimes, not real fancy, but I'm doing it with a whisk. I'm going to whisk these babies up, get them ready to get on the salmon. We're going to coat this bad boy. That is the next step. You're going to take your mixed ingredients and you are just going to coat each side of the salmon. Get some of these out of the way. And that's the next step in the process. So make sure this is mixed up really, really good. Always make sure your hands are clean before you're doing this stuff. And if you touch the fish, always make sure you rinse and wash afterwards, because that could be bad. So we're just going to take this and we are just going to put it over top of these fillets like so. And don't be afraid to use a lot, because that's part of the curing process. As this sits in the fridge, which is where this is going to go overnight for about a good 12 hours or more. This is going to give it a coating, so when it smokes, it's going to hold in that moisture. That's really what you're doing here, getting that salt to penetrate the skin, keep the moisture in there, keep the salmon fats from coming out. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we actually smoke the fish. But just rub it on there, just like you would a good old big barbecue rack of ribs. Just get it on there good. If you need to put a little more in, that's fine, because the other side's the skin side. This is the most important side. This is where it's all going to happen. Don't be afraid to make a mess. Wife may yell at you a little bit. As long as you clean it up, you're good. She'll never know what's going on. All right, so we're just gonna get that all in there. And we're gonna turn it around. Put it on the skin side too. Like I said, you don't have to be fancy. You don't have to have all kinds of fancy chef tools, because they sure did not when they were cooking. So just get this on there. Get that rub on there. You will notice that as you're doing this, that it's actually going to start to penetrate the fish. It's actually going to appear that it's dissolving away, but it's starting to do its job. So just keep coating it. I like to coat this side as much as I possibly can with the mixture. That way, when we finish the curing process after we get it out of the fridge, it'll really, really, really be good to go. Okay. So now that we have that done, if you want, you can just roll around some of the excess here. Make sure you get all that goodness up, coated real good. All right. So the next step in the process is you can wrap this up in some plastic wrap. I prefer just to put it into a plastic bag. Give it a chance to breathe while it's in the cold fridge. So I'm going to wash up here a little bit. The maple sugar will make it a little bit sticky. All right. So get yourself some Ziploc bags. And these fillets are pretty big, so I'm not going to put both of the fillets in one bag. I'm going to give them each their own bag. I'm going to drop this bad boy right in there. I'm going to get as much of the air out as I can. The other bag, get this guy in here. He needs a little bit more. That's good. Get him in there. Again, as much as the air out of the bag as we can for the fridge. And that's pretty much it for the prep stage. So we will get these in the fridge and we'll let them in there overnight, good 12 hours or more. And then when we come back tomorrow, we'll start the next step and get them prepped for the smoker and get the smoker going and get this meal rocking. So we will talk to you when we get to that stage. All right, so we got the salmon in the bag, and the first thing we want to do with these is we want to wash them off real good, get all that salt off the fish before we put them in the smoker. All right, looking good. So you are going to notice that after you do put your rub on the fish and then let them in the fridge overnight or a little bit longer, that it's going to get a little tougher, okay? The fish is not going to be, I'm going to say, as flimsy. And that's good. That's what you want. That's what you want to smoke the fish, because what that means is the salt has penetrated the skin and it's going to smoke. It's really going to be good when it smokes. So that's a good sign whenever that happens with your fish. I don't know the actual scientific explanation or the scientific food chef explanation for that. I just know it's a good sign because it tastes delicious. let's get this other one washed off here. Okay, there's the other fillet, and that one's looking good too. Now what we're going to do here is we're just going to let the salmon sit here for maybe an hour or two, and we're going to let it dry, because what we're looking for it to happen is we want to see this almost transparent brown coating form over the fish. And that's also another good sign, because that means it's, when you smoke it, it's going to seal everything in and keep the salmon from becoming too dry during the smoking process. So that's a good sign too, but you do want this to almost air dry before you get it into the smoker. So with that said, let's go get the smoker ready, because we can do that while we're waiting for this to dry. Here we are in the great outdoors, getting ready to smoke some salmon. It's going to be a good day, and it's going to be some tasty dinner here tonight. I did not go over how I start the charcoal, because I'm sure everybody knows, how to start the charcoal. The only thing I will say is I don't use any kind of charcoal lighter fluid, anything like that. I prefer the chimney method. Just put some paper in there, fill it up with charcoal, lighter up, and let it get good and hot till some flames come up in there, and then you can dump it in the smoker. Now, for the smoker that I'm using, it's nothing fancy. There's no big smoker involved in here. It's like a $75 smoker. It does the job, but like one of my favorite gardeners, Skinny Boy Randy, says, we ain't got no money. We just ain't got no money for that. So we don't need this big smoker. I mean, you could actually smoke your fish in, fire pit surrounded by, some boards or some cut up logs like they did. So this does the job for me. I cooked an entire turkey for Thanksgiving dinner, and everybody loved it. So what I do then, as the chimney is, this charcoal chimney is getting ready to go there, as it's getting hot, I do put some additional lump charcoal in the bottom tray of this smoker, and then when that's ready to go, I just put that over top of it. That way there's going to be enough heat to keep going for several hours at the most, just to keep the charcoal going, so I don't have to mess around with it. Seems to do a pretty good job. There are times when I have to put a little bit more, like if I am smoking meat or something, or smoking a giant turkey, then I'm going to have to feed this baby, keep feeding the baby with charcoal to keep the heat going. But for fish, I mean, we're only talking maybe 2 to 4 hours at the most, so I'm probably not going to need to keep feeding this thing charcoal. The other thing that I did do, as we're waiting for the temperature to get where I want it to be, which is right around, it's running a little hot now, 200 degrees, so I'd like to see it around 150. I don't want to heat this salmon up too fast, because then it'll overcook and won't get the smoke flavor. The other thing that I do is I'm using lump hardwood for this, and it's actually hickory hardwood, and I'm only going to use 2 for this because I don't want to over smoke the fish, and I got them soaking in water, and that's going to help generate as much smoke as possible for the whole cooking process. So that's pretty much the pre-setup for the smoker and getting the smoker ready to go. So I'll wait for this thing to get up to temperature, and we're also still waiting for the salmon to dry to get that sheen over top of the fish. A little sticky. You need it sticky to get in there. You don't want it too wet. You want the smoker to really be able to do its job and not overburn it as it's too wet. But once you get that sheen on that salmon, she's ready to go, and you can let it dry for 1 to 2 hours until you actually feel the stickiness. Sometimes it'll turn a little browner, and that's okay. Other times it won't, depending on what you have seasoned the fish with prior to the curing process in the fridge. So we'll let the smoker get to the temperature where I'd like to see it. Then we'll put the salmon in there, and we'll be ready to smoke. All right, I'm liking what I see here. We got see the smoke. We got some good smoke coming out of the smoker here, so I think we're ready to roll. Temperature's starting to stabilize where I'd like to see it for salmon. So I think we're ready to go. I think we're ready to smoke these bad boys. Now, like I said, you'll know when the drying process is done with the fish, when you can kind of like see a shiny sheen over top of the fish, and it's a little sticky to the touch. And these are perfect, so I think we're ready to go here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get these bad boys ready to put on the grate. And what I'm going to do first is to keep them from sticking, because this is not a high heat process. So during this whole process of smoking, we don't want the skin to stick to the grate to the point where it actually pulls the skin off when we remove it from the grate. So what I'm going to do, and I'm using another indigenous cooking oil. This is sunflower oil, and I'm just going to put a little bit over the skin here, just to try to keep that from sticking on the grate. I'm also going to put some on the grate itself. Which will help with that sticking. Some people like to use spray cooking oils, and that's fine, not a problem. This is just my preference. Since I am doing indigenous recipes, I'm going to stick with the sunflower oil, and I find it works pretty well too. It's one of my favorite oils to cook with. So let's just get this bad boy right down here on the grate, and then we'll get the other one ready. Get this guy all oiled up. The other thing the oil might do is give your skin a little extra crispiness. Maybe some people who do not like the skin of the fish may find that this is actually a more tasty way to enjoy the salmon skin. Otherwise, you know, you can just take it off before you serve it. For those who don't like it, that's not a problem. Put that down there. We're ready to rock and roll. Smoking some salmon. So we'll let this go for about an hour, and then I will check the temperature. I'll check the doneness of the fish, and I will also baste it with some maple syrup, give it a little sweetness to offset the saltiness of smoked fish, because you brine it, or even if you you do a dry brine process, and a dry curing, you're still going to put some salt in there. There's going to be a little saltiness. So if you want to offset that, the best thing to do is to actually do some basting there. And you can use honey, you can use anything you'd like. We're going to use maple syrup for this recipe, since it is an indigenous recipe. And we'll wait an hour, check the fish, cover this up, and then we'll do some basting as we get ready for a real tasty dinner here. So we'll check back here in about an hour and see how it's going. All right, we've hit the hour point into smoking our salmon, and the smoke is dissipated, but that's okay, because I'm really not looking to over smoke the fish. The rest of the process is going to be cooking and getting it up to the internal temperature, which is about 140 degrees. If you prefer more smoke at this point, you can put another block in, another wood chunk, or if you're using chips, you can put them in and keep that smoke going. But for the most part, I'm just going to make sure that the grill is just cooking the salmon. So we're also going to start our basting process, which at the hour mark, we're going to start to sweeten this bad boy up and give it a good baste of some pure maple syrup. Since this is an indigenous recipe, we're going to be using maple syrup. You can use honey if you want, if you prefer honey over maple syrup, whatever flavor you would like. But as I said, this is an indigenous recipe, a Native American recipe, so we're going to do what they would have done and used the maple syrup. So it doesn't have to be thick. All you're looking for is get a little sticky and just give it a little glaze during this time. And this is just another way to keep the moisture inside the fish. Now, one thing I don't think that I did go over is I do have a water pan in this smoker, which if you do smoke meat or fish, it's always a good idea to have a water pan, a drip pan, and that way you can create a certain amount of steam inside your smoker just to make sure that the meat or the fish does not dry out. So just a little bit of maple syrup there for the basting after the hour. We're going to come back. Oh, I do want to check, just to be sure that we know what's going on inside this fish. We do want to, at this point, check the internal temperature of the thickest part of the salmon, which is probably about here. So I'm reading about 130 degrees. So I'm going to leave the temperature of the smoker where it is, because that's good. If I turn it up anymore, it's going to cook too fast, and then we'll overcook the salmon. So I'm going to leave my internal temperature here where it was, which was about 140, 150 degrees. And then we'll continue to check the salmon after an hour and see what's going on with it. And if we still need to cook it, we'll baste it some more. So we'll be back to check on it and see how these bad boys are doing soon. Time for our second check on salmon here. See what our temperature is and do another basting process. Like I said, I'm looking for a temperature of 140. I might take it up a little higher, depending on what recipe you read or what article you read. Some people have different preferences. I think the actual cooking temperature for fish is around 145. I've read that chefs in restaurants, they'll take the salmon up to about 120 degrees, then they'll take it off and let the resting process bring it up to the acceptable temperature. But they're professional chefs, so I have a tendency just to take it up to about 140 degrees. There are some other articles that I've read, especially during the smoking process. Some people like to take it all the way up to 175 degrees because they want to infuse more of the smoke into the fish. But a good rule to follow is, and the reason why you don't want the heat so high when you're smoking the salmon, is you don't want I don't know if you've ever made salmon and then all that white gooey stuff comes out of the meat. Well, when you're smoking it, if all that stuff comes up out of the meat, then the salmon's going to be really, really dry, and there's a better chance for it to be overcooked. So if you've got a real good baste and you've done the curing process good and you keep the heat down during the smoking process and you don't see any of that stuff coming up out of the salmon, then you've done a good job and you're going to have a really, really tasty salmon. That's a guarantee. But we've been at this for about 2 hours for the smoking process here, and I want to see how we're doing, see how the baste is looking, because I want a real nice glaze. I want this to darken up so that the maple syrup does its job and looks really good on top of the salmon. We also want the temperature to be good, not overcooked, but not underdone, or undercooked. But let's check it out and see what we got on our temperature here. And I'm almost at 140 degrees. So, like I said, I think this is a good temperature, and I'm not going to throw any more coals in. I don't want to get it hotter. I think what I might do is throw some smaller chips in there, get some more smoke going for the last hour after I do the baste process here. So let's baste this with some more maple syrup. Oh, that's looking good. I can't wait. I can't wait for this. Oh, she's really looking good. This is going to be awesome. And I don't see any of that white fatty portion of the salmon. I don't see any of that oozing out of the meat. So it looks like we've done a pretty good job in the curing process and kept the heat down, which is good. I'm not going to raise the heat. It looks like it's doing its job. I just want this baste. I want that glaze over top of the meat so it's really, really looks good. And we're going to let it go another hour and then do another check. We might come back in a half hour just to make sure that we're not overcooking the fish. That's probably one of the best things that we should do at this point in time, because you don't want to overcook salmon. As most of you know, if you overcook salmon, it just doesn't, it's not the best taste in the world. I think what I might do, though, is I might throw some smaller chips into the smoker here to bring a little bit more smoke. And these are dry chips. I'm not going to soak these, but I want to bring a little more smoke into the fish for the last hour. That'll also help keep the temperature stable. So our temperature is about 150 degrees, and that's a good temperature for what we're doing. So we'll come back in a half hour. We'll check the temperature, make sure we're not overcooking it, and figure out how much more cook time we have. And then we'll get into the griddled acorn squash and the wild rice. So we'll be back to check it soon. While we're waiting for the salmon to get done in the smoker, we can begin to prep the remaining dishes of the meal, which is the grilled acorn squash with maple syrup and the wild rice. So what I'll do here is I'll just get the wild rice. I'm not going to start cooking the rice yet, but I can get it ready to go. So we are going to do, let's say for this meal, for 4 people, let's do 3 cups of the wild rice. Let's do 3 cups in there. And 4.5 cups of water. 1.5 cup per cup. And for this, we want to use regular salt. Not much. Just about a half teaspoon. Okay. Now that's ready to start cooking. The most prep that's going to be involved here is for the acorn squash. So for that, I need a big chef knife. So there's a little bit of prep involved in the acorn squash. The hardest part is going to be slicing. So you just gotta be careful not to take your hands or your fingers off of this bad boy. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to scoop this out, get all the seeds and get all the flesh out of the inside, because the what we're going to eat basically is this. And you can't eat the skin. It's loaded with a lot of vitamins and some antioxidants. So when this gets on the grill, it's going to be soft enough to actually digest. So we're going to take care of the seeds and we're going to scoop it out, and then we'll come back and get it prepped for the grill. Okay, I got the squash all cut up, and all the seeds and stuff are scooped out. So we got them cut up into slices. We're looking at about 1/4 inch slices to 1/2 inch slices before we get them on the grill. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get a little bit of oil and just brush it all over the slices. Again, we're using sunflower oil for this. And you don't need a lot. I mean, just enough for your seasonings to stick there. And make sure you got a good coverage on all your slices. Now for the seasoning, the maple syrup is actually going to go on after it cooks on the grill. Again, to give it like a nice base and a good covering on there. It kind of looks like a glaze coming off the grill. That's going to go on after we're done grilling. But for your seasoning, we're just going to take some salt. Not too much. Just enough to kind of like hit it. This is coarse salt, and again, we're using the smoked salt. Don't want to overpower it. Just tiny sprinkles. and also some sumac, which is actually the sumac that I found at Wegmans. And again, that's something else that is in a lot of Native American recipes. Specifically, Sean Sherman uses a lot of sumac. And it's kind of lemony. It's a little lemony. It's really, really good. But it is difficult to find. You probably can find it on Amazon if you've got a Wegmans near you. That's another place where you can find it too. That's where I found this. And you just want to flip them over. Do the same thing with the other side. And we'll do the other side. And then we will get these on the grill, and then we'll check in with our salmon and see how that's doing, see if we got that up to temperature or if we need to do an additional cooking time on that. But we'll just repeat this process on the other side, and then we'll get the grill prepped. So, be right back. Oh, you know what? Before I do that, I just want to let you know what's going to happen with the rice here. We're going to bring the rice to a boil when we get to that point, and then we're going to let it simmer on low for about 15 minutes. And then when it's done, we'll just fluff it with a fork, and she's ready to serve. So I'll finish this, get the grill started, and we'll check on the salmon. And we'll check in with you when we get to that point. All right, looks like the grill's all heated up, and we're ready to get going on the acorn squash here. Got the acorn squash slices. Put the thinnest ones on the front of the grill, because I mean, if you know your grill, you know where the hot spots are in the grill, unless you got one of them fancy infrared things that says they have even heat. But anyway, on this grill, I know that it's not as hot in the front, so I'm going to concentrate most of the thicker slices on the back of the grill and put my thinner slices on the front. Ooh, we got a little bit of flame going there. Now, just as a note, I did spray the grill down with some canola oil, and I did use spray for this one, and that's fine. Doesn't really matter. Now what we're going to do is we're going to let these go. I'm going to turn the heat down a little bit because I don't want to burn them. So I'll probably bring the heat down. Temperature right now, it was 500 when I had this closed. We're sitting at about 300. And that's fine. I don't want it to go too much higher than about 450, so I'll keep an eye on this. We're going to cook these for about 5 to 10 minutes, so 5 minutes per side. And we'll flip them at 5 minutes. We'll brush them with some maple syrup. And then they'll basically be ready to serve. They're done when you can take a fork, just like a potato or a sweet potato. And they're done whenever you can take a fork and it goes into the slices without too much resistance. And then, we'll be back to check on them, and we'll flip them, we'll baste them, and then we'll work on the rice, and then we'll get the salmon off the grill, and we're ready to go. So we'll check back in with you soon. All right, let's see what we got going on here. Let's do a final baste in the maple syrup. Let's just use all this maple syrup up. Like I said, I like a lot of baste. I like my smoked salmon not to dry out, and this does a good job of doing that. You just keep on basting, gives a really, really nice coat, and by the time it's done, there's a really cool glaze on the fish, and it looks like it came out of a restaurant. I mean, it's really not hard to make it look like that, as long as it tastes good, So, just one final base, finish up the maple syrup. Oh, that looks so good. Okay, let's check the temperature, see what we got. Oh yeah, we're up to about 150, which is a very good temperature to be at. Remember, we're shooting for about 145, so that's a good temperature. And this one is almost 142 on that side. Let's see, let's get a new hole in here. Yeah, so So I think what I'm going to do is let these go just another 15 minutes and then they're ready to plate. All right, they're looking good. So it's been about 5 minutes. So we're gonna do the flipperoo here. Oh, look at that. Oh man. All right, let's baste these bad boys with some good old maple syrup. And again, this is pure maple syrup. I made these before. These are delicious. I mean, they're really good. Almost like a snack for dinner. A healthy snack. And the only thing you don't want to do with these is get them too charred, too burnt. A little bit of grill char is good. Just go through all the maple syrup, get that on there. The other side, yeah, if you want to do that in the end after you get it on the plate, you know, you can always do that. But this, I found that this is actually enough. I mean, this is enough maple syrup to do the job and to give it a lot of flavor. All right. Check on them in another 5 minutes. And now we're going to go check on the salmon, see how close we are with that, and then get busy on the rice. Okay, should be the last check. Oh, yeah. $145 degrees. These bad boys ready to come off the grill. Smoker. Yeah. Now the trick is to get these off the grill without ripping the skin off the bottom. So let's see if we can actually. Ooh, yes. Oh, that's how you can tell that these bad boys are really, really done. Oh yeah. Yeah. Let me bring these up to the camera. Oh, look at them. Now that's some delicious smoked salmon. That's good stuff. So we're gonna let this rest for about 5 or 10 minutes, and then we'll cover it with foil, keep them warm while the rice cooks, and then we're ready to plate. We are in for one delicious smoked dinner here, boys. This is gonna be good.
Look at that!
Yummy! Dinner time!
Come on, let's eat.
Oh yeah. Now I gotta tell you something. It was a good dinner. The salmon was banging. The acorn squash was rocking. The only thing I can say is we had a little bit of trouble with the rice there. Just a little too wet. And I'm not sure if we had too much water in there or some other things happened. So, you know, we're going to have to work on that recipe coming up. But, hey, that's what life's all about. It's a learning process. And you just learn as you go. But I mean, it was a great recipe. And I'm really into the indigenous Native American recipes because since I have started on the Native American recipes, Sean Sherman's book really got me into this. Since I have started cooking like that, using a lot of natural ingredients and cutting out some of the processed things, I'm a high cholesterol guy. My liver count is sometimes out of whack and things like that. I've really started to bring my blood levels down to like a normal level. And it was just because of switching to that type of diet. So for me, I love the taste. I love cooking it, and it's just awesome. So for future cooking series videos, I'm probably going to be doing some food preservation, some dehydrating, some fruit dehydration videos coming up. And for the next cooking series, I'm thinking about a venison stew, which is really, really good. I've done bison, some bison roasts, and they're just, I mean, it's just incredible. Some of these Native American indigenous restaurants that are popping up all over the place, giving us some great ideas on some tasty dinners. I mean, they're just rocking. I mean, it's banging. So it was good. The only criticism I have for what I did there was the rice wasn't the best. I mean, I don't like my rice to be too wet, and it was just a little too wet. I mean, that's the only thing that, but it was good. I mean, it was great, and my wife loved it. The kids loved it. I gave them some of the salmon, and they loved it. I mean, there were no leftovers, so, and that's always a good thing. So, yeah, great. It's great. So share some of your recipes, on the comments sections. Some of the things that you like to cook the most, some of your favorite recipes, some of your favorite meals. We can learn from each other. 2022 is going to rock. That's all I got to say. And if you just keep telling yourself 2022 is going to rock. So be on the lookout for some more cooking series coming up in the HomeFront CyberCast Mission Report. And we've got some more things coming up. But for all intents and purposes, I mean, I think this was a good start. It's good to be back in the whole broadcasting realm. So be on the lookout for HomeFront CyberCast Radio coming up in the near future. We're going to rock that. And if you'd like to get a hold of us for any particular reason, just email us at cybercast@homefrontcyber.com. Just remember, if it ain't fun, it ain't worth doing. So keep yourself healthy, keep yourself cool, and always keep rocking, okay? Don't let anybody tell you that you cannot rock and roll, because that's where it's at. So be on the lookout for more HomeFront CyberCast broadcasting mission reports coming up in the near future. And this one is in the bag, baby. We are out of here.
This is your captain speaking. We've been cleared for departure.
Mission complete.
The Mission Report is a presentation of HomeFront CyberCast Broadcasting, brought to you by HomeFront Cyber Support and Security. Tech support, security, and protection is their mission.